All right, getting started here. I'm going to dive right into a chapter in particular. I think it's going to be important with this writing process to do what feels kind of fresh and exciting in the moment to keep momentum going. So, I'm going to go into a particularly important chapter. So, I gave this example during my live stream with Mo about how in every movie version of this, just taking my ear off so I can actually hear myself talk, they actually cut out this whole section. Sabra goes back to her hometown. She interacts with her rather terrible mother, and there's this straining point. Whenever we go through these big changes in life, we can relate to the forces that try to pull us back. So I think it's a very important emotional scene. It's also going to tie into some uncomfortable truths of her beliefs that we can see she very clearly gets from her family with relation to Native Americans. So my hope with this is that we can have a scene where there is a lot of this discomfort, both with her and for her, but also sort of against her because of what she believes. And so I think we can have a protagonist that has these beliefs. I want people to feel uncomfortable about it in the same way you would if you were in the room with someone who's your family and they said something that you didn't agree with. Of course, we can't stop and speak to her in the middle of the scene, but I wanted to challenge other people to be like, would I have spoken up? Would I have just agreed with the people that were in that moment? That's something that we all have to kind of experience at some point, generally speaking. So I think that will provide for a rather intense scene. But I'm also, as I've talked about, not just going to glaze over any racism, things like that, and pretend they don't exist just because they make us uncomfortable. I think it's very important. So I'm going to start, like I said, with just a pretty raw go through of this. I have my own version of the book in my hands here, so I can see what I highlighted. So in 3.5 years, Saber had hardly yielded an inch. It was amazing. It was heroic. Um, let's see here. Going real quick through this. Certain standards. Um, True, she's so only in 3 years had she gone back to Wichita. Only once in those 3 years. Fever of an anticipation. So, let's see here. I can Sim and Donna. So she's got her two children now, and this is this. Oh, this stands out to me so much. I highlighted this right away of just her awful introduction from her mother here. But let me just go in order here. Trunk containing every clothes. Prominence. Okay, your skin, Felice Venerable has claimed at the sight of her daughter. Your hands, your hair, as dry as a bone. You look a million. What have you done to yourself? Saber remembered something Yancey once had said about Texas mischievously. She paraphrased it in order to shock her tactless mother. Oklahoma is fine for men and horses, but it's hell on women and oxen. The visit was not a success. So, I also want to make sure that this. Yeah, okay. So I think maybe almost like the spacing looked different on my version, but I want to make sure there wasn't actually any literal differences. Um, so we could start. I think they're going to be like probably just in their dining hall here in a moment, but let's see here. She missed the pace and uncertainty of Oklahoma life. So how do we show things that are just in her thoughts at this point? There are also some funny moments in the book where she even says like, there's one line I really like where she's like, I probably could have done this better than the men, but at the time she wouldn't even let herself think that because she was still very much in love with her husband. So the author's enjoying not only giving us the inner thoughts, but the inner thoughts they're not even thinking yet, at least consciously. So that, of course, we cannot directly show in the movie. And I will do everything in my power to not ever have any voiceover just to kind of share the thoughts that way. We'll do that as a last resort if it's something really, really important to show and I can't really get around it. Show, not tell, right? Any other way. So with that, let's just make sure we know our locations here. Every teacup conversations with her girlfriend friends seem to lack tang and meaning. There's a moment I love in the movie. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar at the inciting incident. They get kicked out of their talking club with their girlfriends, and they're devastated about it. They end up going on this big vacation, turns into this huge spy adventure, sort of. And at one point, it seems like this totally random point in the movie, but where things are really heating up in their new life, it cuts back to talking club, and the girlfriends are sitting around, and one of them says, I like the look of wicker, but I don't like sitting in it. Like wicker furniture, something like that. And it's this delicious contrast of like how silly their talking club is, how kind of meaningless their conversations are. Not to be unkind, but to then contrast back to this big spy mission they're all on shows you how far they've come in their lives. That they've taken these moments of bravery to go explore new territory. So that's the kind of juxtaposition I want to be able to make here in these moments with her family, where you're like, ugh, man, I'd rather be like dying of thirst out in the desert than be around these terrible people is something I really want to show in these moments. So, I do want to look really quick at something I had highlighted, I think right around this same page here. So, it's Hell on the Oxen. Not a success, she missed the pace, exhilarating life, like we talked about. Tang meeting. For herself and the other women of Osage, there was everything still to do. I feel like that you could almost even show with like a shot of the clothing being so restrictive of that time period, very much in contrast to what they would sometimes wear in the West. I'm reading a lot about that in my other book right now. Gentle Tamers, about the ways that they would try to change style just enough to be able to get by with the difficulty of moving around in the West and, riding horses and stuff like that, but also really wanting to still be on the front lines of style, still wanting to have fashion be a factor. I should grab that book too, but anyway, so there's that interest there. But the idea of these women, maybe I could show something with the women of the East being like literally seeming like they're chained to their chairs in a way, like they cannot move. They are still in a way that the West is constantly moving and active. So I think there are ways that you can show, again, show not tell, aspects like that. But I also have to be careful because I can show things in the screenplay, but ultimately I think that the cherry on top would be incredible production design and costuming and makeup and all that good stuff. So I can try to do as much as I can here, but I think the ultimate show of it, and my mind is very visual in these ways, would be out of my hands in a way. But I can still try to communicate as much as I can. Why don't I see if I can pause here real quick to grab that other book so I have it. I can't pause it. I'll just... Oh, no, I can. Okay, I figured it out. One sec. Okay, so I couldn't find my exact quote here, but I do want to show just that I'm working with Gentle Tamers. I'm on a section that's talking about makeup, which has some funny lines in here, like gunpowder was easier to find than face powder in the Old West here. But there's just a great quote, and I personally am not as interested on the clothing side of things, but I know this is all very important. So I guess maybe I just didn't highlight it, but it was some quote to the effect of like, the only reason this particular item of clothing survived in the West was because these women were not about to let go of it. Like the strength of not giving up on it, because it was not for practicality. It was for staying in style. So anyway, I can't find that exact line, but I'll be referencing back to this. I think it's still helpful context. So let's jump back into it here. So making sure I knew what I had highlighted. Let's see, everything now. Everything's still yet to do, right? So the idea of women that are staying put, maybe not enacting much change, versus the women of the West that has everything still to do. That's at least how we're having our character see it right now. It's like this all feels so drab in comparison. Terror to be swept and garnished by an army of sunbonnets. She keeps coming back to this kind of playfully, kind of tongue-in-cheek, the author. Now, the very forms and institutions that now board her in Wichita. That's all I'd really highlighted there, but I kind of starred the sunbonnet thing because it comes up a lot. And then we're going to get into kind of the key point here where her son speaks up and puts her in an awkward position. So I think we could probably start this, I don't know, maybe in their dining room, something like that. Let's see if I can scan here for where we physically are. Borrowed thing. At this, the Venables and Marcias and Vians and Goths looked not looked not only shocked but stricken. Chests of lavender-scented linen sideboards flashing with stately silver had always been a part of the Venable and the Marcy traditions, so they are fancy people. Cimarron, saying his full name, we can put that in, because that'll probably sound a little weird to the audience at this point if we've only heard it by Sim, and of course the title itself we associate with Cimarron. Sabra had hardly heard it since her birth. Obstreperous, I think I highlighted that, Mike said I didn't know that word at the time. Noisy, difficult to control, entrance into the world. He shouted delight. Look at him, see him kick with his feet, strike out with his fists. He's a wild one. Hey, Cimarron, pequeño gitano. And now Cimarron, my little man, tell us about the big red Indians. So I think that's a good moment where we can kind of be like, ooh, where's this going, cousin? There are scenes at the beginning of the book too. I think it's one of the first scenes where you can kind of see her cousins as kind of like, ooh. in that specificity. All right, so I think let's have one shot of her like outside of the house getting welcomed in. We can have the terrible line from the mother, and then we can cut to like dinner. Everyone's sitting around talking after dinner. That can be a nice mirror to the first scene with them at the beginning, which I may or may not cut just because I want to start from Sabra's perspective. I think it would be a failing to start from our boy Yancey's perspective. I think that'd be like every other movie where they make him the protagonist. So I think if I really want to still iron it from her perspective, I like the idea of starting not from his storytelling scenes, but from a scene where Saber's like going off to an old friend of hers and being like, I'm really doing this. I think there's a lot we could learn just from that conversation, starting at a point of kind of emotional intensity and introduce a lot of the themes. So that's going to be my challenge. So I might not do as literal a translation of chapters 1 and 2, I believe, in the numbers. But let's get into it here. Let's get going. So let me make sure my screen thing is still going here. I think it is. So this is, I almost said season 12, chapter 12. I'm going to start off with an exterior shot. I think I could call it Venable Home. Make sure I spell it Venable. Yeah. Venable. Whoop-dee. Venable Home Day. Let's see here. They're probably coming from some kind of a carriage. I don't know if I need to specify that. Door opens to Miss Felice Venable. We already introduced her in the script so far, theoretically, so we don't have to put her in caps like you would otherwise. Felice Venerable. The door opens to Felice Venable, who looks shocked at the sight of Sabra and her 2 children at the door. Now, as Felice was one of the last people to see, I'm gonna have to teach my screenplay all these words. So definitely, I don't know if you need to learn it, but hopefully you can ignore it every time. I guess we could have it learn Sabra. And if it's gonna keep coming up, then yeah, I wanted to learn that word. Okay, so in I think seeing some movie versions of it, they even have them leaving, and Felice Venable's like way off in the corner of the shot, like up in a window, like not even really coming to say goodbye. So do I think she would be the first one to open the door? Probably not. Probably one of the last people who then kind of pushes her way through and says something demeaning. But I think for just getting right to the point of this, I might start it a little bit more staged, and then as like rewrites come through, I can kind of clean in that up. But what I don't necessarily want is to like introduce like 15 more people right here. Like it would be servants, and it would be her other relatives and other people probably pushing to see who's there. I don't know if I necessarily want to do all of that. I think that'd be kind of a clunky introduction here. So if I do something more lean to start us off, I think that'll be good to remember. Why am I writing this scene? What is its purpose? And again, this is just our first kind of stripping from the novel. And yeah, versus something that might be a little bit more practical, realistic in the context. So let's start with this. The door opens to Felice Venable, who looks shocked at the sight of Sabra and her 2 children at the door. Let's just get right into her line here. We're going to take this direct from the book. Do we want to put in her full name? Let's start with Felice right now. Maybe because then I'll decide with the cousins' names how much I want to differentiate. But no one else's name. Ooh, wait, hold on. I think they're... Spoiler alert. I think her granddaughter gets named Felice. I don't think she'll necessarily have any lines in this though, so I'm going to keep it as it is. Maybe it'll be helpful to have the last name to kind of be like, this is of the Venable tribe. I just don't want it to look too similar when you're reading the page and get confused, because I struggle a lot with that, and I change it sometimes if it's like I always think of the time like in the Barton and Banner, the first Avengers movie. It was like, I can't keep these bees apart. Like my brain's not really good at that kind of thing. So anyway, we might change this later. It's easy to go in Final Draft. I don't know if you can see my toolbar, but you can go into Tools. I think it is, what's it called? Document, Smart Type, and then from there, see, it's already showing like I have 2 different names. Let's make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing here. Yep. And obviously it's just one person. So I'll leave that for right now. That's fine. But just so you know, if you ever have to rename an entire character, the Smart Type can help you out with that. So, Felice Venable. Your skin. Your hands. And this is where we could be all the more specific. Let's see. She exclaimed to the sight of her daughter, your hair. I'll probably want to break this up, but let's see how we go. How much space it takes up in total. Your hair as dry as a bone. You look so terrible. A million What have you done to yourself? So this isn't too long. I definitely don't want to have anything longer than 4 lines for these dialogue points in here, but I think we can break this up. So your skin, your hands, your hair. Let's have her kind of grab at her for a second. So I'm going to put a line of action in here to break this up. I do this a lot too whenever I have like a monologue. I don't actually put like a monologue on the page, though I have seen that. I think I have a copy of Barbie. I should finish reading. But I'll break it up with stuff happening, so that helps if it feels a little bit too stationary. Anyway, your skin, your hands, your hair. Felice, like picks at her hand, picks at her hair, grabs at her hair and hands, grabs at her hair, and then grips her hands. Yeah, that's good. We can always again tighten this up later, but okay, now that's gonna bother me to have it come up each time. What do we think? Keep the last name in there. Not who's gonna be talking later. We're gonna have cousin Jewett go forth, or Dabney Venable. So I think I like the last name. I think I'll keep it. So for that reason, I'm going to go into Documents. I'm going to go to Smart Type, and I'm going to remove just Felice so that it auto-populates for me with Felice Venable every time. It's dry as a bone. You look a million. What have you done to yourself? Felice grabs her hair and then grabs at her hand and grips her hands. Okay. This is where I'd be inclined to have, like, Sabra roll her eyes or something like that as she goes in the door, but I have to be careful not to instruct the actors, essentially, from the page. That is for them to interpret. All the group makes their way inside. This is kind of a boring way to start, but I'm just kind of getting our blocking in here. This is just a first pass again. So, Venable home. Venable, what do we want to call it? Dining room? I think, well, it's because then that can be a tie back to the first scene. Dining room, let's call it night. It could be after dinner. Sabra, Sim, Donna, and the whole Venable crew sit around the dinner table after an elaborate meal to kind of show, their fanciness. They also talk about in the first chapter that they have these very, like, European style long dinners, and our main guy is often getting very antsy because he's like, all right, I'm done eating. Like, it like pretty much starts, like, one of the first quotes of the book I highlighted was him being like, having finished his meal, he didn't even want to think about food anymore ever. Like, he just wanted to get on to the story he was about to tell. He ate little. His appetite satisfied, he instinctively ceased to eat, ceased to wish to contemplate food. So he's just on to the next thing. But anyways, they tend to linger and lounge and chat. So we want to capture that here. So the whole Venable crew sit around the dinner table after an elaborate meal. So now here we can have our cousin pipe in. Presumably, again, I will have introduced him in the first scene, if I keep that first scene. So I'm not going to do, like, the bold letters as though I was introducing him for the first time ever. So let's see here. Cousin, that's funny, Cousin Joey Goforth or Cousin Dabney Venable said pompously. I don't know why she says it that way within the context. Is he renamed, or the Goforths and the Venables? All right, well, I'm just going to pick one of them. I don't know if it's a rename thing or if it's like, it doesn't matter which cousin said it, but let's go with cousin. And here, similarly, I could say just cousin Dabney and then just Felice. But I think for clarity's sake, I'm going to say cousin Dabney Venable. And we can get right into his quote. And now, Cimarron, which even that should sound weird to our ears. So I have to make sure not to, like, refer to him as such any other time before this, just as long as the audience knows that that's what it comes from. My little man, tell us about the big red Indians. And then here's where I'd want to have him, like, lean forward or something, but that's literally, like, directing his acting, so I'm going to not do that. Did you ever fight Indians, Cimarron? So we're getting right into this kind of point of tension, which I think is great. Let me just have them ignore that spelling, because I don't like the red lines. Makes me feel like I'm in trouble here for my essay. Okay, and let's see. The boy surveyed them from beneath his long lashes, his head lowered, looking for all the world like his father. He's almost 8 now. if it's possible for a boy of 8 to be romantic in aspect. Ooh, I was thinking about that word today, romantic. She talks about how they always wrote this as this big romantic Western, and really it's not meant to be that way, literally. And I was thinking about that word too because I was watching a TV show that had a character talking about alcohol and alcoholism and all these different things in the ways that he talked about it being no, if anything, alcohol helps me. There's a way that we can kind of romanticize alcohol and the effects that it has. So, with that being definitely a big theme in our main guy's life, our main character, I'm like blanking who's the protagonist here. We were just hearing about him when the other was born. Looked like his father. Yancey. There we go. Yancey. Anyway, Yancey is a big drinking thing. Maybe I won't say problem, but it's a big part of his life. And he basically kind of dies in obscurity, the town drunk in a way, out on the outskirts. So I definitely want to lean into that as well and maybe even kind of romanticize it a little bit at the beginning and then have that the veil come off the eyes with that too. So as much as I as a human being have had a very long and interesting relationship with alcohol and sobriety, I think this could be a way for me to kind of work through parts of it through his lens of this character. So that's gonna be pretty personal to me. So anyway, the idea of romantic being a word that came up is like, romantic, this word being a little bit bittersweet, sweet and salty. Okay, so let's see here. Almost 8. Kind of is describing him and physically. Speech strangely adult. I like that. Just they, gossip about the family. He now surveyed. So I will keep a little bit of that description. Sim surveys the room slowly before speaking. I could say much like his father, but I think that's more for the book to do. So now we can have Sim. I kind of want to keep it as Sim instead of Cimarron. Keep it short. He is this kid. He's supposed to kind of take up a little bit less space in our total story versus the title Cimarron, this big epic thing. So I'm going to make that choice on the page to keep Sim described as Sim, even though obviously, as is one moment ago, we see him referred to as Cimarron. So let's see here. We're going to have him say, Indians. He answered with great distinctness. I'm going to give him a ... for that pause. Don't fight white men anymore. They can't. Their spirit is broken. Okay. Now, Indians don't fight white men anymore. They can't. Their spirit is broken. I don't know if I like all those ... but she has it. Their spirit is broken. I'm not going to do all those dashes. I will save those for key moments or like interruptions. Apoplectic. They only fought in the first place because the white men took their buffaloes away from them that lived and ate and traded skins. That was all they had. Took their land away from them. So what do I want just here in this moment? Indians don't fight white men anymore. They can't. Their spirit is broken. I like that. I think that's fine. It's very little. That's fine. Dabney looks, I'm going to say shocked. I like apoplectic, but I think in a screenplay that would seem a little bit arrogant or unnecessarily superfluous to use that kind of language as much as I like it. We're getting right to the point. Screen language. Not that it can't be flowery, but it should be with purpose. So for right now, he looks shocked. Sim's going to continue. Let's do a little bit more succinct version of this with the buffalo, but they only fought because the white men took their buffaloes. I don't know if I need to have that very specific shortening buffaloes for his accent. I don't know that I necessarily need that in my version here. That might just be a little bit distracting to the reader. So they only fought because the white men took their buffaloes. We're getting right to the point here. So you can see I'm just cutting out a couple of words here and there. Then took the white men took their buffaloes. Took away. Let's say took away their buffaloes instead of took their buffaloes away from them. They lived and ate and traded skins and their. Let's see. That took their white man took away their buffaloes and their land. All they had making a couple of like rearranging choices. They only fought because the white men took away their buffaloes and all their land. Yeah, I might change my mind about that, but I think this is a very condensed version to say what he's still saying. They only fought because the white men took away their buffaloes and all their land. Their buffaloes away from them that lived on, ate on, traded on skins. That was all they had, and their land away from them. So, took away buffaloes and all their land. I think that's a fair condensation. But we can argue about the details there. We can go back through another time. So now, Cousin has to have a response to this. Well, exclaimed Cousin Jewett Goforth of the Louisiana Goforths. So why does she now refer to him as Goforth and then Dabney? As long as it's the same person, I'm going to stick with Dabney. I think that's easier for us to keep track of. So I'm going to go with Cousin Dabney Venable. And he says, well, this is quite the little redskin you have here, Cousin Sabra. Why is it not keeping Dabney here? Like, learn the word. I must have hit ignore each time. Damn. Okay, sorry. Well, this is quite the little redskin you have here, Cousin Sabra. And, he continues, so this is where I would use a dash, and I think that's a lot of fun to be like it's kind of like you're being interrupted in a screenplay. I think it reads really well when you want to use it. I don't necessarily want a new line, though. That looks bad. Cousin Saber. Well, this is quite the little redskin you have here, Cousin Saber. I don't want that on the line end, but I just don't necessarily want to mess with this too much. This is quite I added the, so quite, this is quite a little redskin you have here, Cousin Sabra. And he doesn't say directly Sabra, so I do want to keep his familiarity choice there. And continues Cimarron, warming to his subject. Look at the Osage Indians where my father took me to visit the reservation. The white people made them move from Missouri to Kansas because they wanted their land, and from there to another place I forget. And then they wanted that too. And they said, look, you go live in the Indian Territory, we'll tell you, it's all bare there. Nothing grows in that place. It's called the Badlands. Unless you worked and slaved, the Osages, they were supposed to hunting and fishing, not farming. So they're just starving to death. My father says that they will get their revenge from the white man. So this is a big thing, but we are going to still condense it a lot further. The other things I have to think about is how often I mention Osages, because those are the particular Native Americans mentioned a lot in this book. So I want the audience to be familiar with it, versus times where I can be more speaking more broadly. So and so let's have him go right into his memory. So let's see, my father took me to the Osage reservation, and it's all bare there. Nothing grows in that place. It's called the Badlands. I like that. Although I know I'm already getting a little long here. The white people made them move. I want to say time and again. I don't know if that's to my vernacular, but I want to succinct this a little bit. Made them move time and again because they wanted their land. But my father says someday they'll get their revenge on the white. Here we go. Felice Venable turned her flashing dark gaze on her daughter. Aha! Said Cousin Joe Goforth. Still started a little bit malicious to say, well, Cousin Saber, looks that you don't have a Pocahontas for a daughter-in-law someday. So I think I can break this up with some of Sabra, because we do still want to know what she's thinking about all this. We can imagine she's very uncomfortable at this moment. So I'm going to leave that for a moment just so I can keep my train of thought here. On the white, so he's just basically... cousin. He's going to... Oh, that's fine. Aha! Look out, Cousin Sabra, that you don't have a Pocahontas for a daughter-in-law some fine day. I would maybe cut that, but I think, just to be succinct, but I think it's an extra little jab in there. Daughter-in-law, the irony being that he does, in fact, marry a Native American. and that is a hard thing for her to come to terms with Sabra. So I think this is like, so I wanted it to be clear that I don't have to condone her beliefs or anything, as much as I want us to still be able to, I guess, understand them, keeping it as simple as the word understand. I think of this like they say about actors, you don't have to agree with your character, but you're supposed to be like a lawyer that is still fighting on their behalf. But I really don't want it to seem like I'm not making a big deal of racism or I'm ignoring it, I want you to feel uncomfortable when she has racist ideas. But if there are parts in the story that kind of can lead into why she believes what she believes, I'm not going to cut that either. She's not a, sadistic or antagonistic person, but she is a product of her time, certainly. And the only reason why I feel comfortable having a story about her is because we have this contrast to Yancey, who is much more idealistic and who has, call it, the right ideas about people and about Native Americans, and what's been and the abuses, of course, by white people to the Native Americans. That's my stomach. And of course, I could word that much more specifically, but for our purposes, I'm going to jump back in here. So let's see here. My father took me to the Osage Reservation, and it's all bare there. Nothing grows in that place. It's called the Badlands. It's all bare there. My father, can I shrink this anymore? My father took me to the Osage Reservation. It's all bare there. Nothing grows in that place. Let's cut it right here. Let's have Sabra have a reaction. A look of horror crosses Sabra's. Excuse me. Is it Sabra? Sabri? I'm thinking of like The Office. Saber. I just wrote her name. Okay, Sabra. I've been writing it with Sabra. Okay. A look of horror crosses Sabra's face. And I want to have her mother in there too. Face. Felice stares at her with. I mean, I just said a look of horror, so I don't want to double down here. Well, I mean, we know she's there, but we haven't otherwise been talking about Felice, so we'll leave her out of this for a second. I really don't like this line break. I guess I'll just do 1 dash for now. Maybe I'll change that more later. Or I could just do, this is quite the little redskin you have here, cousin Sabre. But no, I like his exclamations of drama. And my father took me to a look of horror across the Sabre's face. And then he continues. Let's get back to our character here. That's right, Sim. And get rid of the extra line. It's called the Badlands. The white people made them move time and again because they wanted their land, but my father says someday they'll get their revenge on the white. Time and again because they wanted their land, but my father said, I probably want to crunch this down a little bit more, try to stick to our 4 or 5 rule. It's called the Badlands. The white people made them move time and again because they wanted their land, but my father says someday they'll get their revenge on the whites. I don't really have an easy way to cut that right now. Called the Badlands. Let's just move this up here then. We got a 3 and we got a 6. Let's average them out. Okay. Looking for crosses her face. The white people made them move time and again. We get their revenge on the white. Aha! Look, cousin Sabra, that you don't look out. You don't have Pocahontas for a daughter-in-law some fine day. She's furious, but she tried to hide her pride. We can put that in a parenthetical. I think, again, it's me over directing my actors, so to speak, but let's jump right in here. So Sabra's going to get her chance to respond. Furiously, but controlled. That's too much in a parenthetical, I know it, but I'm going to do it just so I can kind of still get what I need from here. And then I think, this is the first version of just kind of clawing my way through the book and putting what I need on this page. And then I can do another version, either going back to the book and coming back to this and seeing would I make the same choices, or just taking this and making it as best as I can do it. So I'm kind of okay with this being just that first kind of claw and spatter. It's furious but controlled. Oh, Sim has just heard talk around the newspaper office. I think I can keep that a little bit more succinct than what she's saying ultimately. The men, the Indian agent, he sometimes drops by. They're talking about having an Indian agent's office. Oklahoma City's fighting for it. Yancey's always been much stirred by the wretched Indian. Sim has heard him talking. That's much more important than I think what's going on with the Indian office. But we can come back to that later if I do need to kind of introduce that. But I think the main point that she's going to say here is like, oh, he's just getting it from his crazy father kind of thing. Her talk around the newspaper office. Yancey has always been very much stirred by the wretched Indians. So we are not hiding her racism here. This is important. And it's going to tie into other stuff later. There are some great tragedies at the hand of the Indians, the Native Americans, the Osage tribe. That, of course, does not justify racism. But I'm just saying that these are going to be important pieces to her arc that I'm not going to choose to remove just because I'm uncomfortable as a modern white person, I'm adapting her story. So she decided to put it in. I think it's important enough to keep. And again, not to justify the behavior, but to give context in her particular situation. So Furious Sleeping Control. Oh, Simmons just started talking on the newspaper office. Yancey has always been very much stirred by the wretched Indians. I think I could probably, Sims heard him talking. So she kind of doubles down on that, but I think because I word it just above in that first sentence, I can keep it like that instead of adding at the end, and Sims heard him talking. Sims sensed that he had not made the desired effect in his listener. My father says... Yeah, that's funny. Let's have him interrupt her again. Or interrupt again. My father says... So let's get that into a dash. Can imply some more speech she would have said. My father says. Sim gets up and strides down the room, much like his father. My father says that someday. My father says that someday. Father says. We could just start with someday. No, that's fine. Someday an Indian will be president. Someday an Indian will be president. President of the United States. So that's where it's like, I could just cut it off at president if I really want to save on words, but also if I think this is an important way for him to be like president of the United States for like a kid to be using extra words, then I'm going to keep that in there. So, and again, I can change my mind on any of these decisions, but it's like there are 1,000 different decisions you could make about taking this exact quote and putting it on this page here. So I think it's kind of fun to share this process. President of the United States, and then you bet you'll be sorry you were such dirty skunks to him. Holy shit, I forgot about that. Someday an Indian will be the president. I think it was the whole my father I was reading above. Sounds very bad for me to say my Indian. Someday an Indian will be president of the United States, and I'm just gonna cut. Then you bet you'll all be sorry you were such dirty skunks to him. Love that. Get him, Sim. The eyes of the visiting Venables swung. All eyes swing to Sabra. Basically copy her description here. As one orb from a truculent figure of the boy to the agitated face of the mother. That's fun. My poor child, came from Felice Venable in accents of rage rather than pity. She was addressing Sabra. Took refuge in Hauteur. You wouldn't understand. Our life is so different from yours here. Okay, so I do kind of want to have, now that Felice has a line, I would, do I want to introduce her before this? Debney looks shocked. Let's have her up here. Felice stares daggers at Sabra. I might change my mind on it, but at least I'm putting her up here. So now when she says something, she's not kind of out of the blue. As much as she was in the prior scene, but still, I think that's important. Felice. She's going to say, my poor child. to Sabra, my poor child. And then now we can have Sabra kind of defensively. And this is always something too. I'll sometimes go back and just do entire like go throughs where I just cross out parentheticals. But again, this is the first scratch and paste, copy and paste over. So I'd rather have a little bit too much since I'm already cutting so much just from the raw text of it. So I can kind of remember what the context is here. But then hopefully when I read it back on its own, I'll be like, oh, I didn't need to say defensively. It's very clear that she's defensive just from the text is the hope. So you wouldn't understand. That's fine. Let's keep that right as it is. Our life there is so different from yours here. Because it's like the pressure's kind of boiling up in this moment. Excuse me. Let's see. Yancey's Indian editorials in the Wigwam have made a sensation. They were spoken of at the Senate in Washington. Okay. Felice dismissed all of Yancey's written works with a wave of her hand. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Because she's basically saying, hey, no, what he's doing, he's writing about it, he's getting press, he's getting attention. They're getting attention from Washington. So she's kind of saying, like, even if I disagree with his writings, like, it's good for the newspaper kind of a thing. So that's her defense here. Let's see here. I'll probably cut a little bit of this, but let's take it pretty literally for now. Yancey's Indian editorials have been spoken about all the way in Washington. Yancey's Indian editorials have been spoken about all the way in Washington in the Senate. That's a little bit clunky. I apologize. They're spoken of. I've been spoken about all the way. Spoken of in the Senate at Washington. Spoken of. I guess I could do more little. Spoken of. Yeah, let's just go more little. I'll go back to what she had. Yancey's editorials have been spoken of in the Senate at Washington. And then that's more, boom. I mean, either Senate or Washington are both a good punch, but Felice waves her hand dismissively. Oh, mother, you never liked my husband. Okay. In fact, Sabra went on, she who hated Indians and all their ways. In fact, his editorials on the subject have been so fearless and free that he has been in danger of his life from the people who have been cheating the Indians. So now she's kind of back in this corner where she's actually defending the Indians. Like it says, she who hates them. It has even been more dangerous than when he had tracked down the murderer Pegler. Pegler, you don't understand. The only thing you care about is whether the duck runs red or not. That's good. So that's the other thing too. There's a whole early plot here. Let me fix my spelling. Of the first story he wants to tell is about the last newspaper man, what got shot. And I definitely am going to talk about it. It kind of leads into this great church scene, their first church service in town, but I think I'm going to cut it down a lot. So there's nothing wrong with having a call back to it here. It's just if I was going to really cut everything Pegler at the beginning, I wouldn't have her say this exact line referencing again here. Because I wouldn't want the audience to be like, Pegler, who's Pegler? What is she talking about? I should know what she's talking about because she's me and have that knowledge synchronized. So anyway, let's get right to it here. So we're gonna have Sabra say, in fact, he has been in danger of his life from the people who have been cheating the Indians. So good for us. We can see her kind of fighting for them, cheating the Indians. It's been even more dangerous than when he tracked down the murderer of Pegler. And now this is where I could have them say something in unison, but I feel like that always looks awful on pages. And a lot of times you look it up and there are different ways that people say to write it, and I think I'm going to avoid that. So maybe I'll just have her cousin say it. Pegler. I'm gonna give him the explanation. I feel like my brother would say I shouldn't have that kind of a punctuation, but I like it. I'll be extra dramatic here. They deserve it. Repeated the Venables disdainfully and without the slightest curiosity in their voices. Ugh. This is, again, a great note that I could put if I was directing the cast and hope that they would read to prepare, but not something that I think is appropriate necessarily in these pages. This is where I'd want to put it as a parenthetical giving up, but I don't know if that's appropriate. Maybe I'll just Sabra slumps back kind of thing. Just kind of give that, ugh, you guys aren't even worth it. Like, but again, that's me directing her. It's trying to give it more of a visual than something you can just say in a book, like she gave it up. Sabra slumps back. I haven't really said she leaned forward. I mean, I could do something like this, like a parenthetical here. Yeah, let's break it up because I already have too much dialogue in one hunk here. So let's have an action. Oh, that looks scary. What's happening? Okay. Sabra leans forward. There we go. Pegler, Sabra slumps back. So now it's like, you mother people aren't even worth it. You don't understand. The only thing you care about, I'm going to just double her kind of beginning of our sentences here, a little more symmetry, cut it down a couple words. You only care about whether the duck runs red or not. You don't understand. You only care whether the duck runs red or not. Okay. Even little Donna was not much of a success. The baby was an eerie little elf. She does a lot of description about how attractive her kids are or what their unique features are. I don't necessarily think I need to focus on that right now. Thank God she's not... Let's see. Who's saying this? Making her clothes. The needlewoman had said, thank God she's got style. At least she'll have to make out with that. Oh, sorry. And all in all, she found herself joyously returning to the barren country, which 4 years earlier she had gone in such dread and terror. She resented her mothers to do this and that. Blah, blah, blah. She saw Valise Venable now, no longer as a power and authority and all that matters, importance, but a sallow old lady who tottered on heels that were too high, and who, as she sat talking, pleaded and unpleaded with tremulous fingers the many ruffles of her white dimity wrapper. The matriarch had lost all her crown. Sabra was a matriarch now, and her own little kingdom, I like that, was planning to extend that realm beyond and beyond its present confines. Conquering. Confines into who knows what vastness of dimens. I'm sure I looked that word up, so let's see if I left myself a note here. Their spirit is broken. Dimensna. Possession of property. So not to be colonialistic, but it is a little fun to hear her kind of having us talk about the woman's position, being like, I'm going to build even more of it too, and have even more things. She decided take her children into her own hands. She's like, man, they're getting ideas from Yancey. Let's see. Cowboys wear brings some shield their faces. Handkerchief. What is all this about? Oh, just hearing the boy, Yancey, and the boy. There's a scene where they're on their way out to the west the first time, and she talks about how, like, sometimes Sim would be in her cart, sometimes he'd be in Yancey's cart, and then he'd come back to her cart, and she'd be like, what is your father telling you? On and on about these things, this trail of tears, giving you ideas, all this stuff. So there are things I can show here, and what this is kind of harkening back to in other places. So she had meant at least to find occasion to inform her mother and the minor venerables that it was she who honored Yancey's fine white linen shirts, but she was not a spiteful woman. She reflected that this might be construed as a criticism of her husband. So gladly, eagerly, Sabra went back to the wilds she had once despised. So what's hard about this is, like, how do you even capture that visually? I think it's going to be a lot of little things, like you could even have, like, the clacks of their little silverware be annoying, close-ups on their kind of over-the-top clownish makeup be kind of gaudy. So those are a lot of great visuals, I think. Not great, like I'm patting myself on the shoulder, but it's dramatic visuals, I think, could show this idea, so that when she like closes the door behind them finally, she's like, which of course I could put in here quite literally, but just thinking about different ways to show not tell. So let's see what we actually have here. So she comes in, oh, you look terrible. They sit down, they have this conversation. It's like, you don't even get it. You just care for whether the road's red. Let's see. The Venables. How am I spelling this at all right? Venables. The Venables burst into disparate. I wanted like a judgy adjective of like their discussion is just so empty. Disparate, empty discussions. Venables burst into disparate, empty discussions. So, now I feel like we need to have them. Because the next moment we're going to have them getting off the train station, which is definitely important, but that's kind of a different vibe. I do actually kind of want a moment of like, this is the end of the discussion. She doesn't have any like, goodbye, mother. Hope to never see you again or anything like that. There's not like an actual line we can hang this moment on, but I do maybe not want to like have it just end right here. But you know, maybe we'll be pretty literal for the moment. We're gonna have her. Let's see. There's a moment that she gets to like, she's like kind of sitting with her kids, and then she's like, "Oh, stop messing with your clothes. If you mess up your clothes, I'm gonna," you know, stuff like that. Because she wants them to look good for coming back home. Did I invent this? Nancy was not there, because already we're at a different moment here. What did I totally make this up? Hold on. Before the kitty pulled into the stage and extended it, save for his eyes, watched the comedy conductor, the foot of the Alex still held on it enthralled, though she had snatched at whatever he passed their seat or stood to relate gossip. New dresses made him want to shout. Okay, here we go. She'd anticipated a look when he saw the sight of it, wanting them all to look good. That's this great intense scene, but okay, well, I'll find it. I won't take too long here. But I feel like there's a moment where she talks about like having her kids like kind of futzing around with their fancy clothes and being like, if you mess that up before we get back to see your father, like you're gonna be in trouble. But anyway, oh, I do like this part too. So one thing that she doesn't get to do is get to see her friend Bridget. And that really bums her out because she wanted to be like, look how far I've come kind of moment. So actually I do need to have this. So let's put that together here. So this can be kind of a round out to chapter 12. I'm going to have us back outside the house, Venable home, and it auto completes nicely. Daytime, this can be the next day. Sabra finishes packing the children into the carriage. There's a better word for it. They have a different, but I don't explicitly know from the book which particular transportation device they're using. Stagecoach, I guess we could say for now. Maybe I'll come back to that. Coach. Sabra finishes packing the children into the stagecoach along with their belongings. Then turns back to face her mother and cousins waiting at the door. I had hoped to visit. We'll visit. This is gonna be a lot clunkier because it's my own words to communicate something. I'm not, it's not gonna be as clean as just copying directly from the book. But I know this is important, especially if I want to start with that scene of her and Mother Bridget. We'll go see Mother Bridget before taking the train home. And then Felice can interrupt her and be like, Mother died some 2 weeks ago. So it's like I want that to feel like, oh, we were so close. She just died. That's so sad. Okay, we'll we'll got to see. We'll go see Mother Bridget before taking the train home. Mother Bridget died some 2 weeks ago. Sabra gasps in horror. Let's see. Let me read this here. It was not until she learned the sad news that Saber realized how tremendously she had counted on her telling her the tale of Osage the Nun. She would have understood. She would have laughed at the story of the 10 barrels and the wild cowboys and sympathized with her terror on that Sunday church meeting she had known that very life a half-century ago there in Kansas. Saber, during her visit, did not go to the mission school. She could not. Saber gasps in horror. Eyes well up. Felice eyes her coldly. She's not feeling anything about this, I would imagine. Then, I suppose, just be on our way back home. Maybe this is a good moment to say home. Like, no, this isn't home. That's home. Felice. How do you say snorts? Snorts is too intense. She pushes at this. Raises her nose at this, but the two exchange dry goodbye. Sabra boards the stagecoach and lets out a sigh of relief as her childhood home passes out of view. So that, I don't know if I can technically say that, since it's like, I mean, I guess that's still exterior home, but now it's probably like interior. Yeah, so we'll try to be proper here. So this would technically then be interior stagecoach day. Sabra, let's see. Sabra boards the stagecoach. Sabra lets out a sigh of relief as her childhood home passes out of view. Okay, boom. So yeah, not the cleanest thing ever. A little clunky at times. Let's have them learn Pegler, because that's going to come up more. Venables, yes, it's plural of the word I just wanted you to learn. And I think that's a good breaking point. So it's really only 3 pages here, not a ton that we've written, of course, but we have a good capture of what's going on in chapter 12 here, which I think is important to the story. I think it'll be fun to jump right into 13 and talk about the intensity there, because again, what we're going to go into is that she comes to this empty train station. You know, small town, you'd think it'd be a pretty big deal when the train shows up, especially in the West, when this is this lifeline to every other part of kind of their world, both in terms of supplies and in terms of information. So when she arrives at a empty train station, that is kind of like a horror show situation. Something is very wrong. All she hears as we get to this next page is the click, click, clickety, click, click, click of the sending Morse code. So that all the more is a red flag. So it's this great tense moment that we then find out that our main guy Yancey here was caught up in a shootout. So the movies all chose to show a big dramatic romantic Western shootout instead of showing it more faithfully to her perspective. So I think that'll be fun to start from these points where I'm deviating from the film. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. We got 3 pages written here for chapter 12. Hopefully you kind of learned a little bit about my process here, and we'll see where we jump in next.